Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone's having a lovely Tuesday morning, and hello to Catherine. How are you doing, Catherine, and how have you been since our last show last week?
Yeah, morning everybody. I'll be really honest, I had a terrible night's sleep last night. We're really struggling actually at the moment with trying to balance both of us working and homeschooling. I don't know how everyone else is getting on this week, but I think having 2 weeks of Easter holidays was lovely. And now it's been a bit of a struggle, but we did have a lovely weekend. My youngest, who's 6, learned how to ride his bike. Yeah, I can scoot, and then he falls off and cuts his leg open and then goes screaming inside the house, and then he's like, but I want to go back on again, and then he gets back on again, and then he falls off again, and it's almost like this up down, until finally he got it, and then he turned around to me and said, Mummy, this is the best thing in my life ever.
Oh, bless him. Bless him. It'd be nice to be that age again, wouldn't it?
It would be. The innocence of it all is lovely. How was your weekend, Tom?
Yeah, bad, thank you. I went for a socially distanced walk with my partner, which was lovely to see her, but obviously even harder to say goodbye without giving her a cuddle. So I think we did the right thing, but it's tough. I think it was nice to do.
Oh, good man.
Perfect. What have we got coming up on the show then?
So we've got, first of all, we've got New Model Advisor joining us for today's news. We've got Jack on this morning, I think.
Yeah, hi, good morning, Catherine. From the anime desk. So yeah, this morning I'll kick off with markets briefly. Obviously, I'm sure everyone saw last night the rather extraordinary news that oil price went negative for the first time ever, which is just very difficult to comprehend. I think it might have just been on one trade at the end of the day, but obviously that's fed through to the markets this morning. The FTSE's down about 1.5%. And we're likely to see a lot more kind of turbulence, I think, as the day goes on. In terms of the actual reasoning behind this, obviously there's the Saudi Arabia-Russia dispute. I guess it feeds through to me personally in the fact that it might mean that the Newcastle United's new owners might have less money to spend in the transfer market in the summer. But obviously it's going to affect clients and markets as well as we go on. Next up in the news, some slightly good news. We've got a good news story about an IFA, Simon Lakey, who runs Westcott Chartered Financial Planners. He's talked about the fact one of his clients has repurposed a 3D printer they've had in order to make some ventilator parts for the NHS. So a nice bit of good news about one of his clients doing something really positive. And then finally, news this morning that Quilter has announced that its long-awaited platform migration is likely to be delayed because of the coronavirus crisis. This is kind of hardly surprising in many respects. They were due to migrate about 90% of their remaining platform assets onto FNZ in the summer. Don't know how many users of Quilter are in this group, but yeah, we've had basically they've come out this morning and said that the final migration is likely to be delayed. How long that's delayed for, we don't know, but it could be a few more months.
Awesome, that's great, Jack. I just love the way that that advisor whose client has what was it? Was it a printer?
3D printer, yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah, I just think it's amazing how people are just finding these amazing ways and opportunities to support the NHS. It's really, really incredible. And here's the old chap who's turned 100 that's raised, is it 20 million now?
Yeah,
Walked around his garden.
Insane.
Seriously, I saw this little jokey social media image that came up that basically had him at an airport saying "see ya," which I thought was quite amusing.
So that doesn't happen.
But no, that's great. Thanks so much, Jack. And now we've got the wonderful Chris Budd and his Wellbeing Thought of the Day segment. So Chris, what do you have up for us this morning? What's your Wellbeing Thought of the Day?
Morning, Catherine. Morning, everybody. So I'm going to try and over 6 minutes, which is 3 lots of 2 this week, try and summarise financial well-being for everybody. I'm going to start off just in the chat by posting a link to the webinar series me and Neil Page have got coming on, so have a look at that. There was a survey done about, quite a few years ago now, of a bunch of people who'd had a life-changing event. They were either lottery winners or they'd had an accident, a loss of limb type serious accident. And the survey asked these people, what were you happy before this life-changing event, and were you happy after this life-changing event? So what does everybody think? Were people happy before? Were they happy after? You might think that the obvious answer would be that people who'd had a lottery win were happier after the event, and the people who'd lost a limb were unhappier. And then you might think, that's just trying to trick us. So it's probably the other way around. Maybe money didn't make any difference or made them less happy. In actual fact, the answer, or the survey showed that whoever was happier beforehand from either group was happy afterwards. And whoever was unhappy before their life-changing event was unhappy afterwards. So the event actually made no long-term impact on their well-being. Now, this is a thing called set point theory of happiness, which says that we go through life with a level of happiness which is set by our genetics and by our childhood. By the time you get to be an adult, your level of well-being is set, and you oscillate around that set point of happiness, but we always gravitate back to it. So that leaves the question to me, which is it possible to change our set long-term level of well-being? The answer is yes, but how? You'll have to tune in tomorrow. Great timing, just as you were taking a sip from your cup, Catherine.
That was fantastic, Chris, to be honest. I'd never really thought about it from that perspective. It makes perfect sense when you say it out loud, but you never really think about it, do you?
Yeah, so I guess that's the point of all of this, is to get people thinking about it, and particularly thinking about your clients. How are you affecting your clients' long-term well-being? And like I say, I've got some tips for that, and hopefully we'll get that in the next two tips.
You've dangled the carrot, so tune in tomorrow, everyone, to find out the answer and find out where that one leads. Thank you very much, Chris. And obviously, before I introduce the next guest, we've got some financial services royalty with us today. But I will apologise for her on her behalf before we begin, and say that she is having some technological difficulties. So there's a bit of feedback. So if you could bear with it a little bit, then obviously we'll get with today's guest interview is with Sian Fisher. Good morning, Sian. How are you? How are you, Sian?
So, I'm very good, thank you. And please forgive the technology. This is one of the slight downsides of I'm currently living with my elderly parents. So I'm slightly reliant on, and I have to say my father's pretty modern for an 87-year-old. But having said that, it's we are living, outside of a main city, so the connection isn't always that brilliant. So please forgive me. For today's purposes, obviously, I'm the CEO of the umbrella body for insurance and personal finance.
Fantastic. And I understand you've been the CEO since 2016, and you've introduced obviously a number of changes to the organisation. Could you tell us a little bit about how the change programme has gone, potentially what the benefits have been about that?
Yes, I was very fortunate that when I started in 2016, I always say that normally when you have a change of CEO, the entire organisation is on fire and everyone's jumping out of the windows is usually the scenario. But I didn't have that situation. My predecessor had done a very good job, and I inherited some extraordinary people and staff in the umbrella organisation. So it was more about modernisation, I think is probably the right way to put it. It's very easy for institutes to kind of get a little bit inward focused and a little bit kind of academic. And so we sort of set ourselves 3 objectives for the organisation. So we said, we need to be relevant, modern and diverse. And then we set 3 objectives for what we would do for the profession. And we said that's all about relevant learning, engaged membership, and insightful leadership. So I know that internal things aren't always very interesting, but hopefully the membership will see some real benefit from certainly a big technology project that we've been doing, which is really all about refreshing the way that our members interact with us. So whether you're buying things from us, or whether you're engaging with us as a member, or whether you're qualifying with us as a student, the technology change, hopefully you'll see some impact from that in the second half of this year and into next year. Even from our slightly clunky website, hopefully that will be better for the future. And then you might say, well, okay, you moved out of the heritage building, but so what? from an external perspective? Well, I hope you would find that if you come to, we have a modern open plan office right by Bank Tube Station now, so you don't have to get lost trying to find us behind the Guildhall anymore. And also when you come in, it looks like a modern open plan office, and we have a members area, so hopefully that's a good step forward. And then when you might talk about sort of governance and diversity, it's a bit of a yawn, but we made some changes to our board structure, which means we now have 4 specific membership roles on the board. And in fact, the very first one of those is now representing financial planning. So Deborah Mitchell is joining us as our new board member for the personal finance membership. And then diversity, like all organisations, we didn't have a lot of diversity at the top end of our organisation. But I think if you go on now and look at both our boards and our committees, I hope everybody would see a lot more what you'd expect to see from a modern organisation. And then externally, there's been a lot of work going on with the society. So we have had a lot of success with the Personal Finance Society, thanks to your wonderful membership. But we've brought that concept now over into the mortgage area with a refresh of the mortgage society of mortgage professionals, and also into insurance with claims underwriting and broking. And then you know that Keith Richards obviously has a big role to play with the engagement with the regulators, government and the public, in fact, on scamming. He's done a great job there. And now we're really working on the refresh of all of our learning for the digital age, as they say, because there's many different ways now of doing learning and qualification, and we want to take full advantage of that. And for our international members particularly, because if you think certain things here have been a little bit old-fashioned, well, my goodness, if you were trying to do things in Somalia or China, you would certainly see the old-fashioned edge of what we do at the moment.
You speak sort of the digital changes and everything. That sort of brings us on nicely to my next question for you. How have the changes in obviously working practices prepared the Institute for the upheaval of having to adapt to the organisation working from home at such short notice?
It's funny how life conspires sometimes to help you, because in fact this project had nothing whatsoever to do with the current situation. But when we moved out of the building, we equipped everybody to be, an anytime, an agile, anytime, anywhere worker, which just seems to be the way things should be today. And so of course that meant that even with our contact centre, we were actually able, within 2 days, we were actually able to get everybody out of our 2 physical locations to be able to work from home. And for many people, it wasn't actually that big a change, because people have been working from home on an agile basis actually for nearly a year. But it was, obviously it's still a bit of a shock for everybody suddenly to be forced to work from home as opposed to doing it on a sort of regular voluntary basis. But I think also, when you think about the concept of flexible working for, mothers and carers as well, the idea of being able to work anytime, anywhere is obviously a concept which is much more modern than the idea of kind of 9 to 5 working in a physical office.
Fantastic. I also understand that you've been heavily involved in the Ensuring Women's Futures initiative. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and what you see sort of as the benefits of the initiative?
Yes, indeed. I mean, we, as the Chartered Insurance Institute, we are very fortunate that we actually operate under a royal charter. And when you get a royal charter, it's not about you as an organisation. It's really about your relationship with the public. So the big mantra in all the charters, this is the same for the other professional bodies as well, is, secure and justify the confidence of the public is really what the royal charters are about. And we all know you don't build, confidence and trust by talking about it. You actually usually do it by, I suppose we call it going to the too difficult pile. And so we set up the Ensuring Futures program, and it's based on looking out into society and saying, if there is either lack of access or direct exclusion of any part of society from, the huge benefit that our professions can bring to people's lives, we need to do something about that. Or actually, probably just as importantly, if there is lack of relevance, so that groups in society don't feel they can engage with us, we need to do something about that. And this is really our sort of pro bono societal role. We kind of bumped into the gender issue because we started asking a simple question, which is, do you think women's risks in life are the same as a man's? And you think, well, how bizarre, but actually we got back this massive, I mean massive no, and we then started to think, well, does anybody actually think about that? Or, when we're planning or when we're looking at risk, do we actually think about those differences? And that led us, we called it the 12 perils and pitfalls that most women would encounter in their lives. And then the 6 moments that matter, we call them 6 moments that can change the world, because they're when interventions can be made that can make things better. And actually, in the end, by doing this work about the life journey, the journey we're all on, we realised that, in fact, the 12 perils and pitfalls and the 6 moments that matter can apply to almost any group. So they're just as applicable to men as they are to women. It's just that the actual underlying risks are slightly different. So this whole idea of mapping the life journey just seems to have really resonated with people. But from a realistic output, we got to some real recommendations, some policy recommendations and some for our sector. And we came out with 2 pledges. And probably the most important pledge for the members is the inclusive customer pledge. This is about getting the corporates in our sector to really take a different approach to how we interact with customers and how we look at the whole customer and the situation they're in, not just the product we actually want to sell them or the advice we want to give them. It's, what do they need, not what do we want to give them, kind of thing. And then the Ensuring Futures program has also garnered about 1,000 individual ambassadors. And we had a very good success for them at the end of last year, where we did a Talk to 10,000 campaign. And we were actually, the idea was kind of, if each ambassador spoke to 10 people, that's 10, that's sort of 10,000 people. In the end, we actually touched 1.6 million people. And it was all to talk about the changes that could be made to make things better for women. But the concept is now there, and we would like to use the ambassadors, for other areas as well.
Sounds fantastic, Sian, to be honest. We had Keith Richards on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he told us that the CII were working on some solutions to the capacity challenges regarding exam sittings due to lockdown. Can you update us on how that one's going, please?
Yes, absolutely. And right at the beginning, I said relevant learning was obviously one of the key areas. Now, classically, you do things in a certain order. And we already had a plan to dispense with, the physical writing of exam papers and the way that we manage written exams in their entirety from April next year. That was always the plan. And we're in the process of moving to a new platform provider who actually, and that transfer brings with it remote, major capacity for remote invigilation. But obviously, classically, that transfer was happening during this year and would have normally taken effect from January, classically. But obviously, the current situation has made us really work with them to see how much of this stuff we can bring forward. Obviously, we've got a key focus on October to make sure that we can do as much as possible on a digital basis by then. But we are going to do quite a bit in July. We're hoping we can still use our exam centres maybe by then, because that would actually make the transfer a lot easier. But if we can't, we are looking to majorly increase our remote invigilation capacity, but also to use a sort of interim solution where you sort of you sort of type in everything and it's recorded. So it's record and review, it's called. So you do your papers and you type them in, and all of that is recorded, and you doing it is recorded, and then an invigilator reviews that afterwards just to make sure that nothing weird was going on while you were doing things. So it's not as good as on the spot invigilation, but it's a very tried and tested method of a halfway house, if you want to put it that way. So we're very keen to do as much as that in July as we can. There'll be a lot more detail on this, obviously, before we get there.
That sounds like a good step forward for the CII, so that's quite exciting. And then sort of final important question for you really is, in challenging times, we learn things about ourselves and organisations that we didn't necessarily know before. What have you learned about yourself or the CII after the last 4 weeks or so?
Well, if I start with the CII first, I'll tell you what, you can't do anything in this world unless the people that you're working with are up for it. And, you never actually know how people are going to respond. But I had a pretty good idea from the way that the staff have responded so far to the change programme, which is a pretty good sort of bellwether, if you like, for their approach to change. And so I have to say the positivity and the energy to actually, make all of our organisation carry on being able to work from home has been incredible. And, some people obviously have, got to say, real challenges that, we haven't got any direct employees who have been hospitalised yet. But we have had family members and things like that. So, there's been some real challenges in the middle of this, but I pay real testament to that sort of approach and energy. And that bodes incredibly well for the future as far as I'm concerned. And then from a personal perspective, I think you were saying at the beginning, Tom, about going for a distance walk with your partner. Well, actually, I'm isolated from my partner at the moment because of being with my elderly parents. So I'm in Winchester and my partner's actually in Sevenoaks on his own, bless him. So I shall, that's been a very interesting thing. Thank goodness for all the video stuff that we've got, because it does make a difference, but it's not the same. So
yeah, exactly.
And that freedom, it's that sort of, I suppose we've grown up as all of our post-war generations. We've had so much freedom to travel, to just do what we want, really. So I think it's really made me realise just how valuable that freedom is. So watch out for. I think everybody would be running around as soon as they get the opportunity to do so.
Definitely. So is that what you're most looking forward to doing after lockdown, then going and seeing your partner?
Absolutely. And a walk by the sea. The sea, because together.
That sounds lovely. Well, thank you very much, Sean. That was absolutely superb. And
thank you for the opportunity.
You're more than welcome. Next up, we've got Catherine Morgan and her coaching focus. Catherine, what do you have for us today?
Yeah, morning, guys. So can you give me a thumbs up or something in the comments or on your screen as to how many of you have heard of the law of attraction? Most of you. Okay, cool. So the law of attraction obviously is talking about, it's a bit woo-woo, and I know it's a Tuesday morning, it's 8:55. I'm not going to talk about the law of attraction, don't worry, but it is a bit woo-woo. It's about how if we put energy and thoughts out to the universe, we'll magnetize all of this thing back. But actually what I want to talk about this morning is the complete opposite of law of attraction, and it's a thing called law of subtraction. And what's really interesting for me about this in our position as financial planners is I think a really great question to be opening out at probably one of the first questions you can ask with your clients is, what can I help you to simplify? Or what can I help you to leave out? Or what can I help you to ignore more of in your life? So get the client to actually think about what is complicated in their life that they don't want. what is irrelevant, or what's causing them confusion or excess of. And I think that's a really different way to approach a financial planning meeting, particularly a financial review meeting, is to be their kind of partner in that. You know, what can I help you to declutter or remove excess of? And there's a really cracking book actually called The Law of Subtraction by Matthew May. And he essentially talks about there's three main problems that are consistent in the way that we make decisions in life. And he says that the three main problems that we have is, one is what we pursue, two is what we leave, and three is what we do. So we focus too much, in his belief, on those three things. You know, we're always striving to do more, to be better, to get to the next financial goal. And so what he shares is, instead of thinking of those three things, is that rather than thinking of what we should be pursuing, we think about what we should be ignoring. And rather than thinking about what we should leave in terms of our life, we think about what to leave out. And it's even just thinking about that recently with obviously COVID-19. I don't know about you guys, but I've certainly been reflecting on some of my friendship groups right now. You know, your real friends are really showing their colours right now, I think. So, you know, getting your clients to think about what do they want to leave in, but actually what do they want to leave out? It might be that actually they don't want to be looking at graphs or financial data, but maybe we've never asked them that question. So what do they want to leave out rather than what they want to leave in? And then the final one is, what do they not want to do rather than what they want to do? So how many times are we guilty of just asking that question, like, what is possible for you? What do you want to achieve? What are your financial goals? But how often do we ask, well, what do you want less of? Maybe they want less jargon, less confusion, less paperwork. Just asking them that question and then just being silent, and just give them an opportunity to think, because often when you ask that question, they've probably never been asked that question before, and it might take their brain a few minutes just to kind of work out, oh, actually, I don't really know. And if you get a pause, just hold that pause, and it may feel a little bit uncomfortable, but just go with it, and practice this at home before you practice it with your clients. So ask your partner, or if you're socially distancing, Tom, with your girlfriend, ask that question, what do you want less of right now? And just listen to their brain, like, whirling around. You'll hear it working hard, because often the brain doesn't like anything that's complicated. So the fact that you're asking it to think about, well, what is complicated in my life that I don't want to maintain anymore? So I just thought that was a really interesting analogy, and a little extra question that you could maybe funnel into your lives or into your client review work.
Normally I have to fill those silences, because I feel as though if I leave it long enough, she might think about me a bit too much, and then she might decide I'm not good enough for her, Catherine. So I worry about those silences. No, that was a really good way, and I definitely have never thought of it in that way, especially at the moment during lockdown. I've been thinking about my friends, and I saw a silly post on Facebook about how those people who are stepping up right now are those people that you want to be spending more time with after lockdown, rather than those who have sort of forgotten about you and will re-emerge after lockdown. So that was really interesting. Thank you very much about that one. What have we got on tomorrow's show, Catherine?
Yeah, so tomorrow we've got Rohan and Adam C, who will be joined by Matthew Aitchison and Russell Facer. And they're going to be taking some questions on the current crisis in the PI market. An interesting conversation, I think, for many of us. And we need to make a little just a special mention about Thursday's show as well, because we've got Rohan, who's doing his first live cooking segment, with the recipe of the day being prawn linguine. I'm surprised I actually even was able to pronounce that.
I was so pleased you got the wrap up, Catherine.
I'm winning already Tuesday morning, so really looking forward to that. Hopefully, Rohan, you're going to put some spice in that mix with some, a few prawns and linguine. So really looking forward to that. So stay safe, everybody, and really looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning. Take care, guys.
Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.